The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Are you ready for Insights to Incite? Ready or not, it's showtime. Now get ready to listen in and watch right here on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Join us and together we will escape the mundane. Insights to Incite, here is your host, Brandon Lawson.
Neglect is often the slow poison in a relationship. The wound it causes cannot be mended by begging to be heard and acknowledged. To do so will only lead to further harm of your worth. It is very painful to release what you had hoped for, but letting go of someone who overlooks what they have in you is a good investment for your future. Today is Thursday, June 2nd. This is Brandon Lawson, the host of Insights to Incite, coming to you from my home here in Ohio, just 18, 20 minutes or so out from Indiana. And I just want to take a moment, as I like to do at the beginning of each show, and thank you for joining us, and thank you for tuning in to another message here on Insights to Incite. And last week, I spoke about utilization. Yes, utilization. And I spoke specifically about, why is it that we sometimes neglect to use our gifts and talents even though we actually enjoy it? I mean, it's natural that if you're talented in something, you're very gifted, you will enjoy doing it. But there tends to be, some of us who neglect to use them even so. And I spoke about why that is, and I exhorted us to utilize our talents, to put our gifts to use, to not let them lie dormant within us. And with that being said, I mentioned last week that last week's message was the first of two parts on the topic of utilization. And this week, I want to speak with you about neglect. And while we covered some of that, last week, as we talked about don't neglect your gifts, the neglect I want to speak of more today has to do, it's more personal, not to neglect you, that we're not to neglect ourselves. And within here is a struggle that many people endure, have issues with. And when we have a natural bent, a tendency to look after others, to care for them, that's who we are. And we often will put ourselves and our well-being on hold. We put us to the side, but that can create more issues to where we can't even be of use to others and help them near as much. But the struggle is, we as humans, we have a natural bent to being selfish. And so sometimes if we focus on ourselves, we feel like, that's being selfish, that's wrong. But, there's a fine line to walk here. And that's I'm not going to talk a lot about that, but I do want to hint at that as we go through this because, you cannot afford to neglect yourself. And so, neglect, whether it's of self or of others, whichever way it goes, neglect. What mental images come to mind as you think of this word? Yes, what mental images? And as you consider the word neglect, what other feelings do you often associate with or find that are affiliated with being neglected? Any feelings come to mind that you so you think of neglect? What These are the feelings that neglect would invoke within you. Take a few minutes and consider those. And as you ponder that over, we're going to step away to our first commercial break, and we'll be right back.
Are you on the edge of your seat and wanting more? Stay tuned as we go on a quick break, and we'll be right back with more Insights to Incite with Brandon Lawson right here on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Are you seeking a speaker or coach who speaks life into your people? If so, look no further. Brandon Lawson is one who will inspire and motivate his audience, as well as empathize and relate to all. Reach out to Brandon and let him be your speaker and life coach by sending an email to brandon@connectandimpact.net or by calling him at 513-708-1517. Brandon looks forward to speaking with you, to you, and for you. Let's connect and impact today. Insights to Incite, a real show with real-life messages. This show, which can be found on radio, TV, and our podcast, gives us insight to incite us to action and to excellence. Watch and or listen to Insights to Incite live at 9 p.m. Eastern every Thursday on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Check out our past episodes on iHeartRadio, YouTube, or anywhere you listen to your podcast. Join us each week, and together we will escape the mundane. We are back with more Insights to Incite, so get ready and tune in to listen and watch. Now once again, let's join Brandon Lawson.
So, okay, we got Douglas. He says decay. Yeah, avoidance. Very well said, Douglas. I mean, when you are, neglect is a passive type of behavior. To look past, and it's much like when I think of avoidance, I think of passive rejection. But very well said. And thank you for chiming in. And anybody else want to give some input? We'd love to hear from you. But yes, when you are neglected, you feel like you're being avoided, and and quite frankly, you probably are. As sad as that is, that's reality. I mean, that's what's going on. But, neglect, this word is a feeling, but I would go on to say that it's more than a feeling. Yes, it is more than a feeling. This passive treatment, it has its way of stirring up and evoking within us a whole new set of feelings. Yeah. What other feelings? Oh, there's various ones. And as Douglas alluded to a couple there, and I just will share a few here. I put, that neglect stirs up and invokes within us feelings such as unwanted. Unwanted, I'm an outcast. Unloved, I'm nothing. What's the point here? Undesirable, I'm nothing but garbage. I mean, I'm trash. No one wants me. I mean, why am I here? What's the point? Friend, if you've ever felt this way, and somebody else here just chimed in for us, says neglect could have suicidal thoughts. Very true. It could lead to that, especially if it has its way of sinking deep down within us and simmering, and it's long standing. But friend, if you've ever felt this way, then you know just how futile and fruitless such feelings are. Sadly, many times the very ones who neglect you are the same people you see every day. Yes. You've been there. You see them, but they don't see you. Or as soon as you come within their sight, where you're in their view, they turn the other way. They won't even acknowledge you. Sadly, that's how it is many times. These are the type of people who would rather just look right past you. And friend, you know, that is the nature of the society we live in. And hopefully you don't have to deal with that in your own household, as there are many who do. There's a lot of messed up homes throughout our world. But when we talk about that, that's when somebody else is neglecting you. But how about when the person who is neglecting you is the very one you see every time you look in the mirror? Yeah, every time you look in the mirror, you see this person. This happens quite frequently, especially, I would say, amongst you who are mothers. A lot of times, especially if you have a lot of little children, there's not 4 or 5 years in between, one kid to the next, but you have a lot of little children and you're trying to manage them all. You're bending over backwards. You're wearing yourself thin, wearing yourself out. And you can't neglect your babies. They're your love. And of course you love them. And you very well should. But as a result, many times you might neglect yourself because you don't see any other way of taking care of them. That happens. I mean, and you who are mothers, I think, would vouch for that. And many of you may know what it's like. Or what if, say, you're not a mother? You're not a mother, but your profession is one that can be very exhausting and very demanding. It's one that your profession is such that that the focus is intensely and intentionally up on one or more people, none of which include yourself. That could be, maybe you're a personal trainer. You're a personal coach. Maybe you're a nurse or a caregiver. Well, it was Jesse Pavelka, the health and well-being expert, who was also an author and coach himself, who stated, "I think a lot of trainers are forgetting to take care of themselves and focusing only on their clients. You see it with doctors, nurses, and caretakers. If you put too much effort into only helping others, you are neglecting yourself, and your health is the only thing that makes it possible for you to help others." Yes. Or perhaps you've felt much like the writer and dance teacher by the name of S.C. Lowry. S.C. Lowry stated, "I grieve today for the times I have loved so much that I forgot about myself and my own needs. I grieve today for giving so much and forgetting that I should keep a little bit back just for me. I grieve today for forgetting so caught up in helping others that I overlooked and I needed a little help as well. I grieve today for thinking I could do it all, denying that I also have my limits. And sometimes having limitations is a holy thing. I just want to love people in a way that makes me feel loved too. I don't want to forget myself anymore." Yes. Self-neglect. Self-neglect is a real issue in our world today. And as we think of this self-neglect, I will say that it plays itself out in many ways. And and within those various ways it can play itself out, we will find that at times it'll play itself out where you neglect, the provisions you need, such as S.C. Lowry was referring to right there. And maybe it's you don't get enough sleep. Maybe it's just you don't get enough quiet time. It's nothing but nonstop rush and chaos all day. Then you get very little sleep at night. Maybe you don't get the proper nutrition because you don't have time to, really make the meal that would be of better ingredients. You eat something that's processed and left and right. That's, your regular meals. That is something that comes into play many times when you're so you know so ramsacked with one thing after another, or you have too much responsibility. Or it could be that you're allowing yourself to be neglected. Yes, you're allowing yourself, you're putting up with too much from another person, and how he treats you, or maybe it's her behavior toward you, and just it's not good. Speaking of the latter, it was Bridget Nicole, who seems to really get this. Nicole wrote, "There's only so many times you can allow someone to let you down before you will no longer tolerate being disappointed. When things go wrong between two people, something has got to give. You get to the point where you get tired of being the only one trying to fix things. It's not giving up, it's realizing you had enough. You've got to do what's right for you, even if it hurts." Yes. And I often refer to those times where if I say anything to that person who is the one I have this issue and dilemma with, I'll say that I will work with you, but I am not here to work for you. I can't be the only one making changes to fix things. It has to be a mutual change that comes together in agreement, even if part of the agreement is to agree to disagree. Yes, friends. Plus, as we consider the former that I just mentioned about where you're neglecting yourself, and whether it's time, your diet, the quietness you need, or whatever it is, in light of that, speaking of taking care of oneself and not neglecting yourself in the needed provisions, Jesus himself understood this. Yes, Jesus, while he is God, yes, he is God, and the scripture identifies Jesus as being God in the flesh, in human form. You can see this in John 1:1 and John 1:14. But this idea, or this, with him being in human form, he himself got wore down. And if you would like to follow along, I'm going to be reading a passage of scripture that comes out of the first chapter of Mark. That's the second book in the New Testament. Turn here. In Mark chapter 1, beginning in verse 35, and I'll be reading from the NKJV. "Now in the morning, having risen a long while before daylight, he went out and departed to a solitary place, and there he prayed. And Simon and those who were with him searched for him. When they found him, they said to him, 'Everyone is looking for you.' But he said to them, 'Let us go into the next towns, that I may preach there also, because for this purpose I have come forth.'" And that's verses 35 to 38. But I just want to key in on verse 35. Now, before I read that one verse again, Jesus, he had just got done being tempted by Satan for 40 days and for 40 nights, followed by the calling of his disciples. And then after that, casting out an unclean spirit, or some translations might say an evil spirit, followed by many healings. So you can imagine, Jesus was exhausted. I mean, he's been, just one thing after another, and, he's exhausted, and he needs time to himself to replenish. And with that said, we find there in Mark chapter 1, verse 35, "Now in the morning, having risen a long while before daylight, he went out and departed to a solitary place, and there he prayed." That's him getting his alone time, away from the hustle and bustle of the crowd, and going to the Father to be refueled, replenished, to get back where he's full. Because If he's drained, how is he going to be much help to others? So Jesus himself knew very well what this is like. And as we think of this, as we look at this, we need to remember that each of us, we all, can have a demanding schedule. And a lot of that is our own doing, what we allow to be put on our schedule. Or maybe it's, a couple, husband and wife, who, went about producing kids without having much time in between each one. So you brought that on yourself. You can't just rearrange your schedule like somebody else who just scheduled too much for this calendar day, but through the choices made. And that's why it's key for us to have, to think ahead. While we want to live in the moment, we need to have the foresight to think ahead, to envision what would come if I do this. Because your actions and my actions today go a long way to producing what you experience, what I experience tomorrow. Whether we're talking tomorrow and just, today is Thursday and talk about Friday, or we're talking about 3 years down the road. What we do today goes a long way to producing what will come to us in the near and distant future. So, as we see, we need to provide for ourselves. This is something that, it needs to be, something we do a great, we need to be, how do I say this? I guess what I want to say is we need to do a good job at trying to balance the two, being there for others, because we're not to be self-consumed, but not neglecting ourselves to where we, are become, so depleted that we can't do much of anything. Not only will we not be able to help those around us, but it's not the life you want or I want either. None of us want to be depleted, no energy. And we don't want to be that way. So, friends, it is a fact. We must provide for ourselves. And it has been said, actually, if you neglect to make time for yourself or take care of your needs, you will eventually fail in every other role you have. Yes. And remember, when it comes to self-worth, when you try to make things better for a lot of people, you may end up making things worse for yourself. A little self-sacrifice is noble, but depriving yourself of too much will only leave you depleted. By that time, most people won't even realize that you need anything because you're the one who has always given. Take care of yourself. Self-preservation is not selfish. It's essential for living a full and happy life. Yes, I could not have said it any better. Yes. Plus, friends, there are a couple realizations that, we need to be mindful of. We need to, be regularly aware of these, not just that we know them, because you can know something to be buried in the back of your mind. We need to be, readily aware and ongoingly be mindful of these things, of these truths. And the first one that I want to speak of has to do with a relationship, has to do with another person and his or her relationship to you or with you. But unlike how Bridget Nicole spoke of how that person is the one neglecting you, in this case, you are the one neglecting yourself. Yes, it has been said, neglect is one of those things you don't know you're doing until you discover that the one who loved you enough to put up with it is gone. Yes, there are times somebody else will walk out on you because they say, you don't even care about yourself. Those are the type of people that don't care about themselves. It's like it's said about respect. If a person doesn't have any dignity, doesn't respect themselves, it'll be hard for somebody else to respect that person. And that's what happens. People see you don't respect yourself, you don't value who you are, and it's going to be hard for them to value you as well. Yes. So, don't allow yourself to, just go right on by and act like nothing's going on. And don't allow yourself to act like you don't matter. The second realization is the fact that many times you don't realize how much you have neglected yourself until you make yourself a priority again. Isn't that true? I mean, think of that. Stop and take that in. I mean, once you start to make yourself a priority again, that's has its way of bringing to light all the time that you have, failed to even notice yourself or your needs. Yeah. It helps bring to light because, when we start to make ourselves a priority, we take better care of ourselves and we can see the good in it and how much good there is in this. And in doing that, it reminds us of how we've neglected ourselves of this good all this time. For many people, that's years, that's decades. Yeah, for many of us, we might even know someone who, them neglecting themselves goes clear back into the last century. I mean, we're only in the 22nd year of this century, but think about that. And you don't want to neglect yourself and your needs, but in light of that, I do want to hint at something that, when it comes to needs or, what is necessary, that's where we get in the Lord's Prayer, or the model prayer. We hear the part that says, Lord, give us this day our daily bread. That's give us what we need to make ends meet, the basic necessities of life. And also Jesus in Matthew 4 and Luke 4, when he was being tempted in the wilderness, by Satan, he referred to Satan. He said, man does not live on bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. I believe that's taken out of Leviticus. But within that, man does not live on bread alone. And we think of our daily bread as our necessities, what we need to get by. If all you ever have is what you need and you never ever get what you want, that is a firm recipe to becoming bitter, especially if you see those around you getting much of what they want. And all you ever get is your needs, but never anything that you really want. And so at times we need more than bread. It's been said that man does not live on bread alone. Sometimes he needs a little buttering up. You need to have more than just your needs. It doesn't mean that wants should supersede your needs, but at the same time, occasionally it is good when we get what we want. It's good for our own well-being, our own frame of mind, helps us to keep a clearer outlook on life instead of having this, this hurt, this pain, this envy of how others have it, but you don't. That has its way of distorting your view. You have a negative outlook. You're very cryptic, and you'll be someone that you won't even like, let alone others like you. So remember, don't neglect yourself, not your needs, and be sure that you're able to enjoy life and you get some of your wants as well, as that is important. So, if you continue, yes, if you continue to neglect yourself, you might be thinking, well, what's the worst that could happen? Well, let me just say that it could lead to a much larger problem. that could manifest itself in many ways and reach out and touch down in many areas of your life. It may lead to something much more than you ever imagined. That's not good. Yes. It has been said that a spark neglected makes a mighty fire. Yeah. Isn't that true? You see that spark. If you don't put that spark out, next thing you know, you could have a blaze. Then the wind of trouble comes by and it blows it along. Now you have, a wildfire just going and burning down everything in your life. Maybe not literally, but emotionally, spiritually. Your whole life you'll have fires going on all around you and all within you as well. So you don't want to let that spark of neglect to be untended to. You want to put it out. But again, what's the worst? What's the worst that could happen? Well, I'll be the first to tell you. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know what the worst is. Like there's various things could happen, but what the worst is, I don't know. But let me just say that he who neglects himself, yes, he who neglects himself or allows others to neglect him, well, why don't you just take a listen for yourself? Yes, that is what will happen. You can only neglect yourself for so long. Sooner or later, you will come undone. If I keep neglecting myself, never tend to my needs, never give myself any of the wants that I desire, well, I will become undone. That is not a place you want to be, nor do I. Don't allow yourself to come undone. Don't become undone, my friend. Yes. So, what is it that you have done? In what way have you neglected yourself? What specifically are the changes that you'll make to see to it that you tend to yourself as well as others? I'm sure there's some differences, some changes that would do you as well as your loved ones well. Think about that, and we're going to step away to our second commercial break. We'll be right back.
Wow, that was insightful. Stay tuned as we go on a quick break, and we'll be right back with more Insights to Incite right here on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV. Are you seeking a speaker or coach who speaks life into your people? If so, look no further. Brandon Lawson is one who will inspire and motivate his audience, as well as empathize and relate to all. Reach out to Brandon and let him be your speaker and life coach by sending an email to brandon@connectandimpact.net or by calling him at 513-708-1517. Brandon looks forward to speaking with you, to you, and for you. Let's connect and impact today. Insights to Incite, a real show with real-life messages. This show, which can be found on radio, TV, and our podcast, gives us insight to incite us to action and to excellence. Watch and or listen to Insights to Incite live at 9 p.m. Eastern every Thursday on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Check out our past episodes on iHeartRadio, YouTube, or anywhere you listen to your podcast. Join us each week, and together we will escape the mundane. We are back with more Insights to Incite, so get ready and tune in to listen and watch. Now, once again, let's join Brandon Lawson.
So, any thoughts? Anybody want to chime in of what decisions that you are comfortable sharing, would like to share, or what you would do different? How you will make it a point to tend to yourself, so you can be there for your loved ones longer, so you can be in better health for them and for yourself. Yes, while we should be there for others, we don't want to do that at the expense of ourselves. I mean, if it's just some monetary expense or a little time here and there, that's one thing. But when it costs us your mental health, your physical health, your spiritual health, emotional health, when that starts to be, sucked out of you, that's when life is sucked out of you. Yes. Because even if we have a setback, whether it's an injury, an illness, or what have you, when you have your spiritual health, your emotional health, that has its way of helping you along to cope. But when you have your spiritual well-being sucked right out of you, friends, that's when true devastation sets in. You can't afford that. Neither can I. In fact, there is a proverb that speaks directly to this. Proverbs 18:14, if you want to look it up. Proverbs 18:14 says, "A person's spirit sustains him in sickness, but who can bear a broken spirit?" You see, when your spirit is broke, when your spiritual health is zapped out of you, when you're drained of that, that's when true devastation makes its way in, and that is not a place you want to go. So, doesn't mean that you don't be there for others, but don't neglect yourself. And it was the author Didinsky who recognized this truth. Didinsky wrote, "Be there for others, but never leave yourself behind." That is essentially what I'm trying to say. This is in no way meant to be to promote selfishness and to tell you to forget everyone else. Just don't forget yourself either. Yes. So, friends, as we think of what it is that we would do different, how, we might do things different. I know that sometimes if you have not done something for a long time and you're trying to, or maybe you never have, it's just like trying to create a new habit. It's said that it takes 21 days for one to truly form a habit, and it takes 90 days for it to truly become a part of your personality. And those 21 days and 90 days are consecutive days, mind you. So be mindful of that. What is it that we can do to try to help create new habits and rot those new habits within us to become a different person, a better person? What can we do? The first thing I'll mention is something that many successful people do, and that is create a routine. Yes, create a routine. Some people have a morning routine and an evening routine. But creating routines where you do that, it doesn't mean you're necessarily going to do the same thing every day. That, like, for example, you might read every day, but you're not reading the same book. You might listen to a podcast or to something else that, will give your soul good nourishment. But it doesn't mean you're listening to the same podcast or the same author or what have you. But create routines. That is one of the best ways to get something down to where it's habitual, and then where it becomes personal, it becomes a part of you. And so routines, the first thing. And then also, as you notice that, you're starting to create new habits, I would say you don't have to go on air and create a podcast or to write a book, but be open to others and sharing, because others might notice a real difference for the better in you. And as they ask, don't be shy. It's nothing to be ashamed of. You're not boasting. If someone asks you, you're not just going around and telling others about the change to you and all that. You didn't even say anything until you were prompted by another individual. If they ask you, share that. And don't feel like you're doing wrong to share that. Be happy to share that and be that, light to others. That is one of the better ways to help keep your light on within you. So, create routines and be open to sharing with others as they ask you, as they notice the change in your life. Friends, we are nearing the end of the show. We do have a few minutes left, a few minutes that we can go over some things. And I just want to mention, as you sure you heard it in the two commercials, but, and you may already know this from past episodes as you've watched here, but we are here every Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern. And, unless there's some unforeseen setback to where I can't be on live or the producer can't, be here to produce the show live on the air. Otherwise, we will be here live every week. And I enjoy having people with input. I want to thank Douglas for his input there. And then there was the other who mentioned something there. And just want to thank for the, the chiming in. It's always good to see others are present, that we're here. And anytime you have a question, feel free to ask, or if it's just a comment, maybe you're just answering my question like the comments made today. But we always enjoy having you, chime in, having you be a part of the show. And friends, as we get ready to wind down this episode, I do want to say that, as you've heard me say before, I recognize that you and so anyone else you point to, I and anyone else I point to, we will never see everything eye to eye. But still, I invite you to join me each and every week here every Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern for another episode, another message on Eye to Eye, Insights to Incite. And as we get ready to to close off the air, close off the show and go off the air, I'm going to have Jason, my engineer. Jason's the one that helps to really produce the show and make it happen. And I'm going to have Jason read a slide to you, the 12 steps to self-care. Take it away, Jason, and we will see you next week.
The 12 steps to self-care. If it feels wrong, don't do it. Say exactly what you mean. Don't be a people pleaser. Trust your instincts. Never speak bad about yourself. Never give up on your dreams. Don't be afraid to say no. And don't be afraid to say yes. Be kind to yourself. Let go of what you can't control. Stay away from drama and negativity. And last but not least, love.
Wow, what an insightful show. Thanks for listening in and watching today. If you missed any part of today's show or any other episode, check it out on iHeartRadio, YouTube, or anywhere you listen to your podcast. Now take today's insight and utilize it. Incite yourself to action and to excellence in the week ahead, and join us again next Thursday and every Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time for another insightful session with Brandon Lawson as he speaks to us and shares some more insights to incite right here on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV.